and action. Up dog. Welcome back to another video, guys. Welcome to JK Hybrid Coaching Class 101 for Dummies and Action. But in all seriousness, guys, welcome back. Hey, I got back from China a couple of days ago, and not only that, I'm going to start off with a little bit of a story, or due to the fact that I got some feedback on my last video 2 weeks ago about and I won't go into the detail of the comment on the video, but it was pretty much, in essence, it was a comment that basically wanted to know why I don't go into detail about my own training, and furthermore, more detail about how I view coaching and training for HYROX in general. And I went back and forth a little bit with this young man, and at the start, I was kind of a little bit taken aback by the feedback and comment, but it kind of got to the point where I actually thought to myself, you know what? I wanted to kind of tell my audience, you guys who are watching this, of course, like why maybe in the past I have not explained thoroughly enough what I actually do from an actual day-to-day basis. I got brought up in a family and in an environment that wasn't all about tooting your own horn. I'll just phrase it that way. I got brought up in growing up as a child and then a teenagehood. And I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a great family who was all about humility and kindness. The more I look into how I try to portray myself online, the more I realize that my background is the reason why maybe I don't share everything and anything online as much as others. I say that, and I already think to myself, well, I actually probably do to an extent, and that's all well and good. But I wanted to kind of start off with that kind of story, because if it wasn't for my background and my family's values of humility, kindness, and I guess just not thinking about talking about yourself, I would probably be sitting here telling you exactly this, exactly that about myself every day of the week. And screw it, like, yes, you could probably say that what I'm saying here is saying that other athletes in this space are doing that because they didn't have that background, and that's damn right. And that's okay as well. It's not a criticism. The athletes that I probably get compared to, in the elite HYROX space, hell, they have every right to share whatever they want to share, and they do it because they want to as well, or they don't want to. There's no right or wrong here. However, we're here today because I realize that maybe I don't share enough because you guys want to know more. And we're here today because of that. I need to realize that it doesn't matter what I think and where I've come from with respect to, trying to be as humble as possible when I am an elite athlete. And I am grateful and proud to say that, and I want to continue to teach and preach about my philosophies. So today, guys, is all about that. Is all about how have I gotten to where I am today over the past 4 years of being at the top end of this sport. So to, I guess, kick things off with that, we always forget about the years and years of training you have done before starting HYROX. And I think I have alluded to this. I was lucky enough to have a childhood of every sport under the sun, and also a childhood of this mindset and mentality of you can do whatever you want, champ. That's from my dad. If you want to become an Australian rules football player, you can. Let's go get it. And that's what I got told. Hence why in 2022, I gave up everything and flew over to Birmingham and raced my first HYROX. Gave up everything, was like, screw this. I'm going to go over, check out HYROX, see what it's all about. Next minute, I'm proud to say that I was the first sub-60 athlete, pro athlete on debut. That was back in 2022. And back then, I thought I was a HYROX athlete and thought I was training well for HYROX. And I was for the time. To now, obviously, have the last 4 years being an Elite 15 athlete, learnt so much along the way. 28 years of my life was surrounded by movement, training, running. And that's the reason why I'm sitting here today, an elite HYROX athlete. I started HYROX 4 years ago with a very solid aerobic base. And little did I know that that aerobic base was going to really help me do what I did early on in the sport. And that was kind of come in from day one and become an elite athlete pretty much straight away. Now, I'm going to go over what I've learned over the last 4 years since I started HYROX. And I learnt this through my own doing by being open to change. I've told the story before. I wasn't getting results in 2023, hence why I reached out to Lauren Weeks, hence why I started coaching, or I started being coached by Anthony Parasini, and ultimately have learnt so much from Anthony and Lauren themselves. And the way I coach is, of course, a reflection of how I train because of my results, right? So this whiteboard, and I hope you can see my amazing handwriting. Spent time and time again doing this handwriting today, or doing this whiteboard. But these are the fundamental principles of the way I train, and I have been training for especially the last 3 years. And of course, the way I coach now as well. So I always think about trying to work out what we are trying to do as HYROX athletes, and breaking that down as simple as possible. And what we are trying to do is get from A to B as quickly as possible and get through the race as efficiently as possible. And due to the fact that HYROX is a long time domain race, or whatever you want to call it, it's a long form endurance race. Your base, your aerobic capacity, is the main element that you need to work on. Everyone, no matter who you are, I've always said this, no matter who you are, if you are an elite HYROX athlete who potentially is doing a doubles race under 50 minutes now, we see that all the time. That's 50 minutes of work without any rest, versus anyone who's doing their first HYROX doing it in 90 minutes plus. You are out there for such a long time. That is why your aerobic capacity is the most important thing. And working on that base is what will allow you to keep developing in this sport. I'll just finish that off by saying no one has gotten to a point of reaching their optimal aerobic capacity. There is always room to improve aerobically, always. No matter, we talk about the best aerobic athletes out there, whether they are triathletes, whether they are cross-country skiers, they have never gotten close to tapping out their aerobic capacity. There's always more. So I learned quickly when I started working with Anthony how much aerobic work you can actually do. So from a year-to-year or a season-to-season basis, I learned that the aerobic capacity is the foundation of everything moving forward. On top of that, it's the muscular tolerance. I call it, I'm calling it here, the muscular tolerance that is actually as important as the aerobic capacity. Because reason why it's as important, if the muscular tolerance, and you'll understand what that means in a second when I explain this, if muscular tolerance wasn't as important, we will see, or we would have seen already, elite triathletes, elite endurance runners come into this space and absolutely blow us HYROX athletes apart. And we have not seen that yet. We haven't. People could argue that, but we truly haven't seen elite of the elite triathletes come in and absolutely blow us HYROX athletes apart. And the reason behind that is because of the muscular tolerance that you need, especially for the back end of the race, especially at the 50-minute mark, 60-minute mark, and beyond. AKA, triathletes find it so hard to wall ball at the end of a race because they have not worked on the tolerance muscularly to be able to produce what you need to produce at the end of the race for the wall balls. So that is why I've learned how important repetition is. And it's not just repetition of the stations, and we'll go into that shortly, but it's repetition in general. We look at the stations and we work out the plane of motion that we need to be good at in order to achieve X in that station. And we just repeat. And we do that aerobically first, and then we also add intensity when needed. But all in all, your aerobic capacity and your base, as we all should know by now, is the most important. When we work on that properly, I say this to my athletes a lot, if we work on our aerobic capacity properly, aka slowing down when needed and when we should, we are slowly but surely upping our baseline. If our baseline is here, what we're trying to achieve is slowly but surely our baseline rising over weeks, months, etc., so that our baseline in general is just stronger. And again, that is why the base is so important, because if we work on that, we allow ourselves to pivot when we need to. The second thing that I've learned through trial and error and working with Anthony is how important broad fitness and variety of time domain, rep schemes, movement patterns, and intensities are for the sport of HYROX. You want to make sure that you keep your training as varied as possible. the more varied your training can be, the more volume you can potentially stack on top of each other. And due to that, you can make sure that you are touching all components of fitness, skill, and energy systems within a week. If you do work on a week-to-week basis, within a month, if you do have a month training cycle. And of course, within longer periods of time. Variety is king. And the way to do that is to make sure that your training is varied with respect to time domain, how long you're working for at a chosen period of time, rep schemes, and I'm even talking about sets and reps for your threshold running, sets and rep schemes there, movement patterns, and even to the point of what movements are you doing after one another, not just one movement in itself, but then also the intensities. And making sure we're working from the ground up, which is the aerobic capacity intensity or effort level. And once we've found a solid base, we can work up from that with respect to intensities. And we all know, obviously, the clear example of intensities is heart rate zones. So what I'm talking about there is going from zone 1, zone 2, and beyond. We need to start from that zone 1 and work up, not the other way around. I've learnt that this broad fitness component here, guys, is somewhat seen in my eyes as CrossFit training. And I'm okay to say that. That is the truth. I've said this a lot. If someone walks into the gym and sees me train, if I'm not on the treadmill, they probably go, oh, he could be a CrossFitter. Because the CrossFit methodology really works on variety of time domain, rep scheme, movement pattern, and intensities. That is why the philosophy of CrossFit is and can be so powerful for training for HYROX. And again, as I said, I have learnt that so much, and so it is so important through the last 2.5 to 3 years working with Anthony and Lauren Weeks. So CrossFit training is almost the backbone after our aerobic base. Quote that if you want, guys. CrossFit training. God, I'll love to quote that because some of you guys will hate that. Next, I actually call it, I've called it here, the component of being strong enough. Strong enough. The way this works, or this component element of HYROX training works, is that strength is important, and making sure we are touching strength most days, not every day, but most. And I call that strength sprinkle. We're sprinkling strength every day of the week, maybe 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, to allow our overall strength to be touched and focused on, but not too much. Because pure strength isn't as important as broad fitness and your aerobic capacity. Now, what this actually looks like is every day that I train, for the last 3 years especially, I have had a strength component to my training. Note, apart from tapering and apart from specific weeks that I am deloading, every day I have a strength piece. these strength piece could be less than 10 minutes of work. But majority of them are 10 to maybe 20 minutes of work. And from a coaching standpoint, I've worked out that making sure that we are lifting or making sure that we are focusing on our compound lifts is so important when it comes to sprinkling in strength most days of the week. So, as example, doing a strength piece that is on an EMOM style, such as every 3 minutes on the 3rd minute for 5 rounds, 5 sets, barbell back squat straight into box jumps, rest in remaining time. That is just an example of 15 minutes of strength in and out in 15 minutes. And you can do that with all the compound lifts. And I do believe, because of what I've done and how I've raced and how I've become the athlete that I've become, the compound lifts are really important. And they are, to me, squat, a deadlift of some description, or sorry, I should say a squat of some description, a deadlift of some description, a bench press, a push, vertical press, and then a single leg squat / lunge of some description. 5 very important compound movements that we need to be very strong in for HYROX. So, strength sprinkles, 10 to 15 minutes per day. And then on top of that, adding in specific strength endurance to allow our body, very similar to the muscular tolerance, the understanding of what we have to endure to get through a HYROX race. And that is understanding the endurance side of your squatting, the endurance side of your single leg unilateral strength is important and more important as the race goes on as well, because you're getting more fatigued and fatigued. Obviously, with this, guys, strength, power, your ultimate power output is somewhat as important as your ultimate strength. That is why I've learned over the past 3 years, especially, that using the contrast method for our strength component is very valid. And what that means is the contrast method is, as I've discussed in previous videos, a specific workout where you're producing a heavy load and a heavy force into a power output load or a power output movement. So what I explained before, going from a heavy barbell back squat into box jumps to allow more muscle fiber recruitment so that your power is being used, is important for power output, ultimately with those compound lifts involved. So general consensus here, guys, strength is important. Every day, 15 minutes a day is all you need to do. And that is how I've become the athlete that I have become. Guys, to finish off, and look, you could say that the base is important, then it goes to broad fitness, and then the strength. But all of this together is how we become an ultimate hybrid HYROX athlete. But I've learnt lately, especially, that there is no point in this 1, 2, and 3 if we aren't priming our system, and I call it the prime phase, aka the taper phase, and also resting when needed. I don't want to go into this because it's not the point of the video, but I have not respected rest and the priming phase as much as I should within the last 6 to 12 months. And I hate myself for it. I'll be honest, I hate myself for it. Hence some of my results lately. The priming phase can allow all this work to end up being presented on race day, or if you don't use your priming phase or treat it as important, it doesn't matter how much work you've done. That work won't be presented come race day because you're still trying to recover from all the work you've put in. The priming phase, to me, leading into a race, is all about speed, sharpening, and total power output. So what I mean by that is fundamentally, we aren't necessarily doing a lot of speed work on the day-to-day, week-to-week leading into a race until maybe 3 weeks out. And then we're touching some speed. And what I mean by that is total overspeed when it comes to our running and then also our station work. But then ultimately, when speed comes into play, more power output comes into play then. So we're actually using more force when we're in this priming phase, which makes recovery and adapting and allowing time to actually absorb all this training to be the most important thing when it comes to lining up on race day or getting prepared for a race. The last 3 years, I would be on a continuous block of double threshold training on Tuesday and Thursdays until about 3 or 4 weeks out of a race. And then ultimately we would sharpen up, as I say here, sharpen up and maybe do some overspeed work instead of a threshold session. And I might touch that twice before a race. And then ultimately do a couple of other power output sessions to allow my body to try to absorb and bump my fitness even more. And then rest and recover to try to race. But ultimately, guys, the last 3 years, I have not touched speed apart from 1 or 2 sessions before a major race. Speed is relative, right? So it depends on you as an athlete, if you're listening to this, and what speed and power you're trying to do or perform on race day. But in the grand scheme of things, guys, no matter who you are, if you're really specifically targeting HYROX, you don't need speed and pure power in your week-to-week training. Hey, take that or leave it. There'll be a lot of athletes who will disagree, and guess what, guys? That's okay. To finish this off, all this makes sense until you put it into a season. And then you go, holy hell, how do you make sure that you are peaking, as I say, at the right times? And I've learned that you can truly only peak twice, maybe 3 times per season. You cannot peak more than that. And making sure that you are looking at this from a macro cycle, from a season to season basis, and then into a micro cycle from a race to a race as such, and allowing time for you to rest is important. And I say that because there is no point in all of this training if it wasn't for rest, adaptation, and recovery. I've learnt across the 4 years of racing that you can truly only peak twice, if not 3 times per year. And every year, it's different. Just because you peaked twice last season doesn't mean you can peak twice this season. And I'll give you something from a personal example. I peaked 4 times in the season of 2025. I only peaked twice in the season of 2026. Maybe that's because of some overtraining kind of thoughts or not thoughts, but overtraining syndrome or not being recovered enough. I'm not sure. But what you've done previously doesn't mean it'll work again. I think to finish this off, double threshold is what has allowed me to perform at the level that I have for the last 4 years. And having the structure of 6 days on, 1 day off is what I've been doing for the last 4 years of training. And the way that looks is Monday, aerobic as well as strength. Tuesday, double threshold as well as strength. Wednesday, aerobic as well as strength. Thursday, double threshold as well as strength. Friday, aerobic as well as strength. And Saturday, double threshold as well as strength. Sunday, for the last 4 years, I have completely rested. And I mean completely rested. The only thing that I would do is go for a walk with Georgie and go to the sauna. But ultimately, that is what has gotten me to the point of being in the Elite 15 for the last 4 years. Guys, look, I find it hard to talk about myself. I find it hard to talk about what I do because of my background. And I have learned if I want to play the game and continue to develop my business, hey, that's the truth, develop my business, continue to get, some exposure with respect to sponsors, I need to get better at that. So thank you for the feedback, the last video, because I need to look at what you guys want, not what I want or what I think. I know that I have a lot to give, and I need to let go of what I truly think is right or wrong. So from now on, I'm going to give you guys more. And for that, I thank you, And if there's any other, I guess, questions or queries or even kind of debates on today and anything moving forward, please don't be afraid to drop it in the comments below, and I'll be happy to help. Guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you ever are interested in my coaching, please have a look at my website. That we'll put it in the show notes below. Happy training, and we'll see you in the next one. Down dog.